Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you are a friend, a family member, a stranger, or who knows, a stranger that used to be a friend. My name is Wilby, Maria to some, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of In My Room. Hi guys, I am keeping up a little bit with the activeness. I'm not as active as a professional would be, but I'm not a professional yet. I am trying to keep up the most I can while balancing schoolwork, but I really trust in this channel. If that means posting once a month, once every 2 months, at least I'm posting it. Maybe somewhere I'll find a balance. I keep getting amazing feedbacks, and I'm so happy for anyone that watches this video, whether it be friends, family, or a stranger. I am so happy you're here. I'm so happy you clicked on my video, and it means so incredibly much to me, so thank you so much. As you can see by the title of the video, today we're going to be talking about art. The title of the video, I try to make it a little bit more fancy than just art. It's art, line between generation. I'm going to put the title right here. Art is so incredibly important to me as someone that's an art major, as someone that constantly is submerged by this universe, not only by my work but also by just seeing it everywhere. I am an artistic person and I draw towards art. It really means the whole world, which is why I am making a podcast about art. Yeah, as someone that is completely submerged in this universe, there's such a big misconception about art, so many wrong voices, and I think that's completely normal because you express it however you want to express it. Art comes in all sorts of forms. There's no limitation for art, which is why it's so incredibly beautiful and it's so incredibly meaningful to express yourself through art, to consume art, to see art everywhere, to just to know more about art, to gain knowledge about art, all that. Art. So yeah, the title, Lines Between Generation, ties back as art is an evolutionary discipline, but that has been a human practice for as long as humans have been on earth. The caveman ages, the way we are still able to trace back everything is really through art, and art represents an evolving society. It represents society as its all. You know, as the caveman ages, we know what their society was like because of the drawings they did in the caves, and as we go on from the Roman Empire to up on, we have the remaining statues, sculptures, structures that were art forms, these architectural art forms that just remain. The art that artists are making right now, whether it is right now, whether it is before, is art that conveyed what the society was like during that period of time. Ultimately, that's how we are really able to trace back how people thought back then, how people acted back then, what were the big movements back then. It's really important because art makes you feel your emotions. It makes you feel someone else's emotion. The most beautiful thing about it is that through art, you can not only express your own emotion, but also feel someone else's emotion. You also get that sense of connection, that you're not alone in the emotion that you may be feeling, and that someone else feels that emotion, not only you. Art requires emotion, and most of all, it requires emotional intelligence, which is something that not a lot of people have, or not a lot of people learn to cultivate their emotional intelligence and to work on their emotional intelligence, because there are generally some people that are very emotionally oblivious and emotionally repressed. They kind of just mask every emotion that they have, and they don't really show themselves. They don't convey their emotions in a healthy way. To create art, you need to be conscious enough to express a feeling, but also make that feeling recognizable to others so they can feel it too. That's the emotional intelligence. We all have emotions, but if you do not know how to express that feeling, people will interpret it in a way that you do not want them to interpret. This emotional intelligence comes from like self-reflection of, I'm feeling this emotion and I want to express this emotion. So how do other people express that emotion? Am I right expressing that emotion? Maybe I express it that way, but someone doesn't. But I have to add hints into the emotion. I have to add hints into this art piece to make sure that people ultimately get what I'm trying to convey. That's the beauty and the challenging aspect of art. It's translating your inner world to something other people world can connect with. And it's hard because your inner world is something that is authentic and personal to you. It's something that no one else besides you are going to experience. No one is living your life besides you. No one will see the world in the eyes that you see the world, the emotions that you feel, how you react to certain things. It's a really hard thing about it, but the beauty of it is when you learn and when you work towards that like expression, trying to make yourself connect to other people through your emotions, it's so incredibly beautiful. We all experience emotion in different ways, but essentially they are the same emotions. It creates a very beautiful bond between you and the artist, or you the artist and the consumer. We are actually feeling the same thing and we're not alone. Even though they are personal emotions, sometimes you would feel a way and you're like, oh, there's nobody that feels that way. I'm the only person that feels that way. I'm feeling so incredibly sad. I'm feeling so incredibly tired. There cannot be anybody that feels that exact same way as me. And then you see it through art, whatever form it might be, whatever form that might resonate with you the most, and you're just like, oh my goodness, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I wanted to transmit that emotion. I can't believe I can actually see it in visual form, sometimes touch it, or sometimes eat it, or sometimes consume it. Sometimes it brings people to tears, sometimes it makes people angry, or sometimes it pushes you to express that feeling even more. The main topic of this video is really how different generations, especially old ones compared to newer ones, interpret art, and especially art majors. Having had conversation with older generations, mostly gonna be focusing on my parents. As any teenage kid, parents want them to follow a very good path, a path that will bring them security, especially financial wise. And you know, when you take the art route, it's not always an easy route, not always a guaranteed route. Generations that are very, very different from us, you know, the past generation, boomers, or what is it, Generation X? I do not know. Generations that come from the 1940s to, you know, everybody has different aspects, but ultimately, you know, very conservative people from that generation, people that often go against art being a major, a professional major. I want to go against that thought. The first axe that I'm going to be talking about is the generational divide. Many people from older generations, especially people who grew up with harsh lives, harsh upbringings, strict upbringings, and constant struggle, life was not as easy. To get something, you had to work 10 times as hard. Your studies, you had to push 10 times more than we are actually doing now with the emergence of technology, of AI and everything. Everything is done for us with social media. Information is available at our feet. Compared to old generations, they had to search through books. They had to do years of studies. They had to use both of their hands, every strength that they had in them to get something if they wanted to do something. And it took months and years and weeks. It took a long time compared to us. Our current generation, Generation Z and so forth, from the emergence of technology, we kind of just had everything handed at us. So these old generations that, you know, were in very harsh conditions, whether it be strict upbringings or it was just this constant struggle, they tend to see art as unprofessional or financially unstable. The emergence of art majors is very recent, not till maybe in the 1960s. I would even go and say 70s. People weren't making art their full-time job. Even if they were often people that were very low-paid jobs. Sometimes not paid at all. They mainly had like a full-time job, like a full-time major, something that's a bit more stable that brings them more money, and then art would be kind of like a side hobby. Art has been a hobby for a very long time, but it hasn't been a full-time job till very recently. With these generations, their relationship with art often has been reprimanded or dismissed. And the reason why is because they were rarely allowed to express their emotions. And as my opening statement was, art requires emotion. Expressing vulnerability was seen as a weakness and not a power. Like I was saying, there were people that grew up in very harsh conditions that had to work really hard, that had to work all the time. When you have to work in such environments, you don't really have time to process your emotions because you kind of just have to go to the next, to the next, to the next thing. You cannot be really thinking about yourself. You're ultimately surviving, and when you're in survival mode, you do not take account into your emotions. You kind of just push everything to the side, especially really strong emotions that usually take so much of feeling. You don't have the time to acknowledge these emotions, so you put them to the side and you just move on. It was really just wired into them. You do not have time to stop and cry and feel your emotion. You kind of just like, okay, this really horrible thing happened to me. I do not have time to process it. I cannot allow myself to process it because I have to move on to the next thing, the next job, to the next task I have to do, because my survival ultimately depends on that. Which leads me to the second part, which is the emotional disconnect. When you grow up fighting for survival, press your emotions and you do not explore them. And deep emotions, the kind that art requires, can even feel foreign to these older generations. There are things that they never learned to explore. There are things that they never learned to dive in deep into. So there are things that are completely alienated from their spectrum. And that's why art kind of seems strange or sometimes uncomfortable to them. They weren't taught to express their emotions. They were taught to endure. In expressing, I mean in all ways possible. When people think art, a lot of people think painting, drawings, and all that, but art is so much more than that. Art is music, filming, food, art is architecture, art is everywhere. And that's why to them, they're not able to really see art everywhere because they're just like, oh no, that's just this, that's just that, that's just that. They often find themselves resonating to something or holding on to something, not knowing really why, but subconsciously it's something that expresses these emotions that they were suppressing while growing up in these very hard conditions. But they do not see these things as art. They're kind of just like, oh, it's in my everyday, it's something that I really resonate with, but it's in my everyday thing, so it's not art. Subconsciously, by consuming these art forms, they actually contribute to these artists. But when it would be to be like, I would say if they had a daughter or a son or someone close to them that would be like, oh, they're following this career path, they would be like, that is not a full-time job thing. Art for them was never meant to be a career, so it's just something they consume, but they do not have that back thought that it's actually someone's right now in our current day and age are making art majors their full-time job, and it's not just a luxury, it's a full form of discipline that people whole lives rely on. To them, it's a very foreign concept that someone would choose to be a full-time musician, and even they would kind of just praise the ones that made it really high, very big singers that made a very big name for themselves. But there's so much more to that spectrum. There's the art that people see, and there's the art that people unfortunately don't really see. There's this misconception concept that to be an artist you need to be huge and big and whatever, and that is so not true. 80% of real artists in the specific major are not seen or do not get the recognition that they should. Moving on to the cultural layer, which is something that really applies to me, especially coming from African backgrounds, coming from an African culture, especially in these countries, or I would say in these underdeveloped cultures or underdeveloped countries, and are not at the same pace that Western countries are. Art and psychology are still relatively very new concepts till this day, because how recent, how premature this notion and this discipline is, people are not quite aware of how important it is for a society to evolve. And I think, I'm gonna make a very broad statement, but I think that's something that's actually keeping them in that underdevelopment. Art is the representation of an evolving society, and if you're not creating art, you are not evolving, and you're kind of ultimately just staying on the same pace. You're not growing, you're not aspiring for greater things. Art puts kind of everything aside. A true artist does not make for money. An artist makes art for themselves. You have to create for yourself. You have to create so you express yourself. Have that thought that, you know, maybe it might not resonate with anybody else, but it resonates with me. You really have to put that personal aspect forward. Dive so incredibly deep in that. In these underdeveloped countries, there are fewer spaces to experience like emotional exploration. There's not a lot, or maybe very few places like cinemas, museums, galleries, places where people showcase their art. There are very few of them. I don't think I've ever been to a museum in Congo. If there is a museum, it's very few. There's probably in total like 4 museums in Congo, and I'm talking about all of Congo. I mean, still a lot of part of that country is not developed. It's mostly forest, no people are inhabiting, but in the cities, there's probably 1 museum per city. It's really crazy. And then even if there's a museum, it's mostly like archival museums that are showing tribal art and everything, which is great. But that's not ultimately what I want to see. We already see it kind of everywhere. There's that in Europe, there's that everywhere. I want to see what people are feeling. I want to see what people are making, how people express themselves, how people showcase their lives, people filming, people, all that. And that's what I want to see. But at the same time, it's things that they can't really do because they do not have the materials for it, or even if they do have the materials for it, getting that recognition in such underdeveloped countries is so hard. You know, they do not have the social media we do. They do not communicate through social media we do, or they did not learn to use social media in the right way. They're still learning, you know, it's a process that is still growing. And without these, you know, a cinema, a museum, without these spaces of freedom of expression, artistic expression, art doesn't get normalized. It's the same for psychology. I'm kind of joining psychology in this. You will rarely find a psychologist in a underdeveloped African country. I say Africa a lot because I have African background, but it can be Asia, it could be anywhere, you know, any third world country that is still in development. People are still currently living in very harsh conditions, and that is why they do not allow themselves, they do not have the space to feel this very big emotions, because it is not normalized and it is seen as a weakness, which is incredibly sad. That is why entire nations struggle to evolve emotionally. They've been underexposed to art as a form of appreciation, communication, and healing. Art allows communication, art allows healing, art allows appreciating, not even creating art, because some people are not able to create art for whatever reason it might be, but you can still appreciate art. Listening, if you're blind, if you're deaf, touching, whichever disability it might be. That's why there's so many different forms of art. If you're not exposed to that, you will not try to seek for viewing life in another aspect, viewing life from another person's eyes. You will kind of just be stuck to self, not going to try to push beyond the expansion of your mind, beyond the expansion of your creativity. And being a creative is so incredibly important. Having a creative mind is ultimately diving a little bit deeper into your child self and your inner self. These are your most true authentic form. So easy to copy each other, to do everything that everybody is doing. You don't really want to be the one that stands out, but art is really the way that you're able to differ yourself from another person, you showing how you feel, and maybe it resonates with someone else, which is the beauty of it. And if it doesn't, then that's your art, that's how you feel. It heals not only you, heal another person. It's never a waste to create, which leads us to our next topic, which is modern art and exposure. Having a full-time career in art is a new phenomenon. Full-time careers, I would say, are things that really came with the emergence of social media, the spreading of full-time careers. I think before even the emergence of social media, there were artists that were practicing their art and they were able to make a living out of it, but it wasn't like, you know, a very big living out of it. And it really became a real true discipline with the emergence of social media, because with the emergence of social media, artists were able to get a bigger and broader exposure. And even today, because of that emergence of social media, the most successful artists aren't always the ones that are the best. They are just the ones that are most exposed, that most people are consuming. I know so many artists that are just in my surrounding, whether it be pictures my friends take, or whether it be drawings some of my friends make, that they're not particularly want to put out there, or maybe that they are actually putting out there, but they do not get the exposure because they do not have some status, or they do not have the looks that people consider or whatever. And they're so much more better. I'm not trying to vent for the people close to me, but they're so much better than these really big artists that are gaining millions for their paintings, that are just like, you are selling that painting because of your name. Maybe you are good at your thing. And you know, art is subjective. That's the thing. One thing about making this video that I was like, is because art is subjective and people see art in a different way. But still, I feel entitled to say what I'm saying because I study art every single day and it's part of my everyday routine. And that's kind of just the thing. Nowadays, people are thinking he must be a good artist because he gets 100,000 likes on Instagram, and she might not be a very good artist because she doesn't get any likes or she doesn't have any followers, which is incredibly false. And this is why, as artists, we need to find find other ways to get validation and to showcase our art without having that standard of getting so and so likes or having so and so people like my art. Sometimes you just have to make art to make art, not for people to like it. And that's when true art form is made, and that's when true art is made to make art just for the purpose of making art. Visibility, community, and connection have become forms of art by themselves, which is why now we will get influencers that will be considered artists, or we will get so and so people that never really practiced art and would be considered artist, and it's just not right. It's not right. With that, we are giving the voice to so many people that don't deserve it. I'm going to be very upfront, giving visibility to so many people that are just making art that is not really truly meaningful. It's just art for the aesthetics, to look good, because you know, we're in the period of aesthetics and things looking, you know, Instagrammable. Art wasn't made to be Instagrammable. Art was made to be felt, and this is why our current society's art is so incredibly bland and so incredibly fad, as we would say in French. Our current art is just not as good and not as touching as older centuries art was, because they weren't making art for Instagram likes. They were making art because that's what they actually truly felt. That's what their society actually represented, and that's how they viewed stuff, and that's their artistic eyes. So many artists like Van Gogh did not know that his art would be costing millions. He was just making art because he was a very sorrowful guy, and that was the only way that he could express his emotions. He died not knowing how important his art would be to people. These are artists that they don't make these pieces for the purpose of being liked by others. They made them for themselves. Most of all, their main focus was expressing themselves and expressing what they felt, and if it resonates with someone, that's amazing and that's beautiful, and if it doesn't, that is completely okay, because an artist's art is supposed to be for them. And now that's the thing, artists make art for a lot of people. I'm gonna say people because I'm not gonna put everyone in the same category, for the sole purpose of being liked by others, for the sole purpose of being shared by others, for the sole purpose of having exposure. In that sense, art is changing, maybe even regressing, because what gets seen often matters more than what is felt. Yes, if it's seen, it's even more beautiful, but if you make art, if you make a piece, if you make a movie, if you take a photo, if you make a food, you just share it to two people and they really enjoy it, that doesn't mean your art is less important than any other thing. If you make a movie and you show it to 2 people, you show it to 10 people max, that doesn't mean that it's less important than a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's still a movie, it's still art, it's still something that allowed you to dive deep into your inner self. It's still something that resonates with you, that still confirms you in that sense that you were able to express that emotion. Being able to express that emotion is the biggest step of an artist. It's so incredibly hard because you need to express an emotion in a way that you express exactly how you feel. You're kind of stepping into this darkness, into this blindness. Maybe it's something that another person doesn't feel, another person doesn't get, and that's okay. If it's not the next person that gets it, and it's not the other person that gets it, it may be a person 10 years down the line that gets it. So make art, and don't make art for the sole purpose of being seen. Make art for the sole purpose of expressing a feeling, being in that present moment while you are painting, cooking, filming, taking pictures, that you are feeling. That's the thing about art. It's multidisciplinary and it's in all aspects, and you can express anything. Just feel. And it's so rare to feel nowadays. I already made an episode about it, about being nonchalant on social media, but now it's not even in social media anymore. It's every day. You're scared to smile at a stranger. You are scared to give a hand to someone. You're embarrassed about everything. Shame is so prominent. It's a shame. It's a shame that shame is so prominent. There's nothing more authentic, nothing more differentiating or confirming than feeling emotions. Moving on to the artist reality, diving into a more personal aspect as an art major. Being an art major or a full-time artist is intense. It's something that has always been intense, now more than ever, because people are taking these majors full time. People are allowed to have these majors full time, women or men. You still to this day get weird looks from certain people when you tell them you're an art major. They create these weird misconceptions that you're someone that's lazy, or you never work, or art isn't actually a real job. How can that be a real job? That's a kid's thing to do, to play with colors all day. It's a hard thing to grasp, because ultimately you're turning what people make of a hobby into a full-time thing. Is a hobby that they either consume whenever they have time, something that they make whenever they have time. And now that you are relying on your art financially and ultimately for your life and every aspect of it, working in the art field, you constantly have to reach out and you have to find an audience nowadays with sharing and posting. This is an art form. Me filming this video, me filming these podcasts is an art form, because I am reaching an audience. I am reaching people that resonate with these feelings that I'm having. I'm not making this YouTube channel a full-time job yet, or maybe if it ever will be, maybe it's not. I'm still on the side, outside of this YouTube channel, still an art major. I am in visual communication. Even in my visual communication studies, I need to find an audience. I need to make a name for myself. I need to be known for certain things. I need to make stuff that resonates with people and that people like, whether it be aesthetically or whether it be feelings wise. Again, have to be able to connect emotionally to people, and that requires a certain emotional intelligence. And I do believe I have that emotional intelligence. I'm pretty good with discerning. Still, I am only me, and there are billions of people out there that express themselves differently, and I might resonate with some people, but I might not resonate with other people, which is always what gives that contradicting aspect. I have to be open enough in order for people to relate to me. Being an artist, you have to be raw. Have no ultimate filter. Have to draw that line between your art and your life. You still have to have your own life outside of art. Although it is something that is so incredibly beautiful and you're submerged in it, you need to also have that balance that you're still living a human life and you still have to go out and do other things and not only be completely submerged in art. You have to look outside of art. I also have to think about scientific stuff. I also have to think about mathematical stuff. Things that maybe are not really in relation with what I'm doing, although I do believe art is everywhere and it's everything that a human ever creates. No, I cannot make it a full-time thing, which is why like a lot of my friends are not art majors. I have my school friends that we share things and all that, and even with my school friends outside of class, we rarely talk about artistic stuff. We also need that break, you know, constantly indulging art, constantly expressing these things, deducting what the artist is trying to express, thesis, art thesis, contemplating all that. You know, it's also great, but like every creative person, you need creative rest. You need to rest from creation in order for new and better ideas to flow in. That's why I love being bored so much. You know, someone would hate being bored, but I'm someone that loves being bored. So I'm someone that thinks so much and that overanalyzes everything. When I'm bored, I really enjoy these moments to kind of just look around and kind of just do nothing, really be in nothing, and it's a moment that I really enjoy. And people often say, just make art, it's easy. Oh, what can be so hard about your test that you're having? You're probably just naming colors or naming the artist. You just need to do this, it's easy. No, I need to make something that my teachers can guess what I'm transmitting, and that's the thing, art is subjective. How am I going to transmit the way that I feel about this certain thing that someone else also feels that way, even though we both might not see it in the same point of view or in the same eyes? That's why it's not just easy, because you have to be emotional intelligent enough to know that, okay, we all feel things in different ways, but what is that one main factor that actually relates us all? Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. So how is that other human going to know that I'm talking about sadness if maybe their way that they express sadness is through anger? I have to find these connecting dots that often is going to tie back to human expression and human psychology. It's really not just easy to just make art. It's something that takes time, something that takes contemplation, so much of diving in, of references, of history and actualization, being in correlation with your current modern society. As an artist, ultimately you're turning invisible emotion into tangible forms. A movie is an invisible emotion that the director may be feeling or the script writer may be feeling, and they're turning that into a tangible form. The same thing as food. There's some food that are very comforting, so that's like these emotions that you might be seeking, and a cook is going to turn that comfort into a food that another person can consume. Clothes too, as someone that is specified in fashion, there are huge aspects of the consumption of art and the expression of art, and it's something that is so done subconsciously by all of us. We kind of just, oh, I don't care about the way I dress, but the way you dress tells a lot about you, whether it be social status wise, whether it be style wise, art consumption wise. The clothes that you wear can tell a lot about you. Turning something that's invisible into something that's tangible is incredibly hard. It's turning emotions into things that people can feel, see, or hear. That's incredibly demanding. Art is often very celebrated only when successful people do it. Only when a certain successful artist does it, that, like, you know, he gets millions out of it, and certain artist makes this song and gets millions out of it. A certain film director makes this film and they get millions out of it. But the real thing is, art is supposed to be made by everyone, and that's the thing. A lot of people will be like, well, no, I cannot make this movie. I do not have the status to make it. And you don't need status to make art. Anyone can be an artist, and everyone is an artist, and every piece of art is a mirror. Art reflects things that other people are often afraid to name. Moving on to the next and final acts, which is the creator's calling. As someone who feels deeply, and that I've learned that eventually it is a blessing. I used to say it's a blessing and a curse to feel so deeply, but I really now am learning to see it as a true incredible blessing. Being a creator is a divine calling. I see it in an even greater aspect as a religious person. I believe in God, and I am ultimately tied back to God. God is the creator of all things. That my creator made me a creator, it reinforces for me this relationship, and it's such a privilege that I am able also to make. I tell myself that I hold such an important role, not to be like cocky or not to have like a big head. It's really not in that aspect. It's also a weight that I hold on my back and that I have to keep on carrying for my whole life. And my role is to create. As someone that has always been creative, as someone that has cultivated diving into my creativity, I hold such an important role to create in order to transform these huge emotions that I'm feeling into something that makes other people feel seen. I have to remind myself daily. There's some days that I really don't want to create because, you know, it is part of my day-to-day routine. I need to nourish my creativity, go to museums, read books, watch movies, all that. I have to remind myself daily that I am not doing this only for me, and I'm not creating whatever I may be creating only for me, but I am doing it for the next human who might need to feel less alone. What drew me so close to art is other people's artwork. I felt so incredibly inspired by other artists because of how they made me feel, and I remind myself every day of how I felt in front of that painting at a gallery, or how I felt in front of that photography at a gallery, or how I felt after I ate that certain type of food. It was a feeling that I have felt before, but that I never learned how to express, but I was like, yeah, that was it. This painting, this photo, this food is exactly how I was feeling. It reminded me I am not alone. The human experience can feel so incredibly lonely because you're the only one seeing life in your eyes, feeling things your way, but we often, a lot of the time, forget that we're sharing this world. We are ultimately all tied to each other. It is something that we're so quick to forget, but through art I am able to be reminded of that every day. Even though I am ultimately living this life in my own thoughts and in my own point of view and in my own feelings, there's other people out there that also feel the same way as me. Maybe in different fonts, but they still feel what I am feeling too. Whether you are grieving, whether you are stressed, whether you are feeling an immense happiness or an immense weight on you, whatever it may be, there's other people that feel like you too. And that's why I create. That's why I make what I make, and that's why I pursue what I'm pursuing. What I'm making is not ultimately ultimately for me, it is for me, but as someone that wants to make a living out of it, I'm making it for the next person that might see whatever I am making. And maybe it's not in this generation, maybe it's 10 years down the line, and that's the beauty about art. It's always going to reflect how I felt right now in this moment, in the moment that I'm feeling that emotion, and that is something that is going to be still of actuality many years down the line by someone else in a different setting, someone from a different upbringing. It's still a human emotion. Someone somewhere is waiting for my piece of art, and maybe it's not here in the country that I live in, maybe it's another decade, but someone somewhere is going to resonate to my art, and that is why I keep making art. Going on to my closing thought, art connects generation not by logic but by emotions. It's what bridges silence, pain, joy, and time itself. The more we learn to feel, the more human we become. The more we find art forms to express ourselves throughout, the more we consume art forms, is how we really tie back into our humanity. And we do not let ourselves get so consumed by social media or by technology or AI. So many people are talking about, oh, but are you not scared that AI is going to take over your job? It's just like, a robot is a robot. It's not a human, and it will never be able to truly, fully, 100%ly express what a human being is feeling, unless it becomes very incredibly truly scary and AI start to reinterpret human emotions really well, and it's hard to distinguish between the two. But it's just like, a robot is a robot. It doesn't have a heart and it doesn't have a brain. It will never be a human being, and it will never be able to feel things a human being is feeling, have the consciousness of a human being and the heart of a human being. Yeah, I talked a lot, and I do not make my life any easier. I just keep on talking about topics that are so incredibly important to me and mean so much to me, and I just want to rant and yap and yap and yap and yap. You know what, it's okay. Maybe in 10 years time, someone that's also going to be a 20-year-old something is going to find this video and maybe feeling very lost in their major, and I hope this video is something that pushes them to keep pursuing that art major, because we're so very free in this domain, and I think artists need such a greater exposure, and not ultimately for the fame, but just to express the art, to push people to fully just express the art because of the expression of emotions, which is the most crucial and important thing about art. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope the next video comes as soon as possible. I am doing my best. It's so hard, but I am not going to try to complain. I am not going to do this. I have a very easy life, and I love what I'm doing. I'm so blessed. I'm so thankful. I only have the mighty one up to thank. So he is so beautiful. God is so beautiful. The creator of all things is so beautiful. It is such a blessing that I'm able to make these videos without being scared of being persecuted by I don't know who, because that is the reality for a lot of people in a lot of countries, and we need to raise more awareness about this. I love you guys so much, and I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. I'm sending you a lot of kisses.